So hi there. My name is Jason France, and I am a second year English major student at the Cyril Potter College of Education. So in this video, we'll be looking at the course Teaching of CSEC Novels and Play. And with this course, we'll be looking at a scenario in which a grade 7 teacher who goes by the name Judith will be transitioning from the grade 7 to the grade 9 level. So there are four questions before she makes this transition so that it may be easier to her that she would ask herself or consider before going or transitioning into the grade 9. So the first question would be explain at least two things she should consider about her learners. So the first thing would be what she should consider is find out what her new students need. It is a very good idea to conduct a needs analysis at the start of your English class. Finding out the kind of ways they will be using English in their real lives will help you to plan suitable and appropriate activities in class. So that is one way. Two, conduct a diagnostic test. This is another thing she should prioritize at the start of the class is finding out the current level of English that your students have. If you have students that have been placed in your class but have a much higher or much lower level of English than the others, it will cause a great deal of frustration for both you and for them. So those are two things that Judith should consider when she is making this transition into the grade 9 class. So we're going to look at the second question, which is describe two steps that she should consider taking to ensure that all students are given equal learning activities in her class. Right? So the first one would be use students' interest and fascination. Right? By doing this, she would find out what her students are passionate about, and then she would use those interests as natural motivators to increase engagement. That engagement would be teacher and students, and also students engagement. Number two, give students choices, right? By doing this, she would you give them engagement increasing whenever students are empowered to make their own choices about how they learn, right? So with this now you have a few suggestions. Either you could let them engage in a group settings, you group them in groups, or you allow them to set at their own pace, right? So these are two steps, right, that she should encourage so that equal learning activities would take place in her class. So question 3 now. Select one of the texts that you have studied that Juliet can use with her students. In helping her, provide a summary of the text. Also, fully discuss one of the themes highlighted in that text that she can use. So the text that I have studied would be Anansi. And a brief summary of Anansi is that Anansi is a popular folktale character who originated from West Africa. He was passed on to the Caribbean during the time of the transatlantic slave trade hundreds of years ago. Anansi often takes the shape of a spider and is known as quite the trickster. He can outsmart, outwit, and beat his opponents using his cunning creativity. Although Anansi is a trickster, he is often seen as a protagonist in his stories, as he learns lessons from his weaknesses and turns them into messages of triumph and goodness. So this is a basic summary of the text Anansi. Now we're going to look at themes in Anansi. So in the text Anansi, I have different themes, but one of the themes and that I have focused on is the role of women. And it says the female characters in Anansi are strong and bold. On board the good ship, Hope we find a slave woman whose role is to assist the young girl to overcome her fears and inspire her to transcend the horrible experience of slavery. She tells the girl, don't tie yourself up with words like impossible, and inspire her with uplifting story of Anansi. So the last question. Select one of the issues highlighted in the text selected in 3 and explain what she can do to make it relevant to grade 9 students. How can she ensure that students gain insight into the issue highlighted? So, as we mentioned before in question 3, Anansi was a trickster and a mischief maker. use his intelligence and cunning to outwit those who are bigger and more powerful, trying to get them to do whatever he wants. However, it doesn't always work out. He often falls victim to his own weaknesses of greed, laziness, and being too clever for his own good. Right? So the way in which these students can gain insight is that in a way they could gain insight that indeed you could be smart, you could be outwitting, right? You could be a trickster, but it always doesn't goes the way you want, because with that now you think that you could be able to do it all the time. And in a classroom setting, as we all know, students tend to cut the short route in whatever examination or studying or whatever they might be doing, whatever subject, right? So by them doing this now, this would help them to become more lazy, right? It would be help them, that would be a weakness. Laziness would be one of their weakness. So by using this as an example, she would be able to give them insight that being clever is a good thing, but not being clever to the point that you want to be a trickster, because at the end it would only pose or be detrimental to their learning. So this is a basic examination of the things Judith should consider when she's making the transition from the grade 7 to the grade 9 classroom teaching English B.